Welcome, welcome to the Darkstream. I don't know if you can see this. Hang on, I'm going to say you may need to join a different channel. Looks like people are starting to come in here. I may be in the wrong chat on. So I'm going to try closing that one. YouTube changed its stream settings. We're figuring it out. It's kind of funny. People are like, what? It's like, well, you have to change the streams. Okay, it's that simple. Where are we now? Live stream. We're not on the schedules. We're looking for here. And okay, I have absolutely no idea where the chat even is. The live stream studio is not showing me, is not giving me an option of the stream that is obviously running and that 148 people are at. So perhaps if we go to the channel, it will give us some idea. And of course it doesn't. Yeah, so anyhow, we're just going to roll with it. Let's not worry about it. If we can't get the chat working, we can't get it working. No big deal. But yeah, it's definitely not working very well here. So we're just gonna. People are here, and so we're just going to roll with it. So the topic is not interesting. So I still got the wrong topic on here too. This is not Darkstream 644. The Big Bear wins a big one, and we did not go back in time. This is actually Darkstream 645 when the shooting starts. And what I'm referring to, of course, is the shootings in Kenosha, Wisconsin, where a young kid of about 17 years old drove 15 minutes and was assisting other people in defending people's lives and property from the Black Lives Matter looters and rioters who burned down about a quarter of the town the previous 2 nights. Now, after being attacked, he shot 3 people. 2 of them have died. And now he's being charged with first-degree murder, which is absolutely ludicrous if you've seen the pictures or if you've seen the video. You know, when you're being assaulted by a pack of people who are chasing you, some of whom are armed, that's obviously self-defense. But as we know, we live in a society of men, not laws, and so it is possible that even a absolutely clear-cut case of self-defense could go awry. So, you know, we'll have to see how that goes. But I'm not really interested in the details and specifics of that case. What's more interesting is the fact that the cultural civil war that has been being waged for the past really 50 years is finally beginning to go hot again. And the difference is that not all of the casualties are on one side. Until recently, you know, the casualties have been almost entirely on the side of the predominantly white, predominantly heritage American people who have been retreating from the cities that they founded for the last 50, 60 years. The problem, of course, is that you can only run so far and you can only run so long. You know, people don't like to admit it, but the whole move to the suburbs, the whole suburbanization was actually a form of soft segregation. It was a way for nice white liberal people who didn't want to appear to be racist to move away from the people of color who were taking over their neighborhoods and to segregate themselves from them without having to face up to the fact that their actions were objectively as racist as any Southern segregationist. Now it's retrospectively obvious that was the case. Nobody is fooled by the whole good schools argument. Good schools are how nice white liberals attempt to hide their racism. And it's interesting too, because you don't see this need to hide their own self-interest in the Hispanic community. If they want a neighborhood, they will just do their damnedest to run everybody else out of it. Compton is still considered by a lot of clueless white people to be the cultural center of Black America, having replaced Harlem thanks to the whole gangster rap era. And yet Compton is now something like 80% Hispanic. 30 years, complete demographic turnover. That's the way that it works. I got an interesting email from a guy today. He's an American Indian, but he is able to pass for white. And he asked me what I do when people just flat out deny my heritage. And I said, well, there's nothing you can do about it. It's not something to concern yourself about. But that's what is in store for heritage white Americans, is that if they permit themselves to be as conquered, if they permit themselves to be as overrun by their successors as my American Indian ancestors were, it will get to the point where people will deny that your grandchildren were even white. That might sound ridiculous, but it's no more ridiculous than looking at me and saying, well, you're not an American Indian. You don't look Indian to me. That's how fast things change. That's how completely things change. And so the interesting thing about Kenosha is it's one of the first times that you actually saw a white American willing to actually fight to try to defend what he believed to be belonged to him and his people. Now, obviously, the people he was fighting were also white, right? I believe that all three of the people that he shot were white. But that doesn't change anything. It doesn't change the realities of what's happening. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the whole reason that the Indian tribe that helped out the Pilgrims, the main reason that they helped them out and the main reason that they became allied was because those Indians were at war with a different Indian tribe, and they wanted the Pilgrims to help them wipe the other tribe out, which they did. So it's not a surprise that one group of native people would fight on behalf of the invaders in order to try to destroy their ideological or tribal rivals. This is a normal historical process, and that's what I think is missing from the public debate of these things. There's a lot of things missing from the public debate. But the biggest thing that's missing is this whole notion that an entire group of people can be replaced without consequence. That somehow the magic dirt is transforming these Irish and Italians and Jews and Somalis and Mexicans into real true blue Americans, as true blue and as American as any descendant of the Mayflower. But it's not true. It's never been true. It's always been a lie. Civic nationalism is a complete and utter historical hoax. And it's a beautiful myth, but it's still a myth. What you have at the end of the day, regardless of what specific melange you happen to wind up with, it's still going to be fundamentally and intrinsically different than what you had before. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is that when you have a sufficient movement of peoples, and in historical terms, movement of peoples is fundamentally synonymous with war. Okay? When the Goths came over and entered into the Eastern Roman Empire, and then spent 40 some years pillaging the Eastern Roman Empire before Alaric led them over to Italy and sacked Rome, they were actually retreating from the pressure from the Huns. This is if you've seen my VOX'S video called Sink the Ships, that's dealing specifically with that particular time period when the Goths begged entry into as refugees, fleeing from the very real and legitimate risk of elimination from the Huns. They begged to be allowed in. They were allowed in, and within 6 years, they had left the Eastern Roman Emperor dead on the field of battle fighting against them. That's possibly one of the all-time refugee blunders, quite possibly topping two of the more recent debacles. Number one being Angela Merkel allowing all of the quote-unquote Syrians to enter, and number two, all of the Americans allowing the Jews from Eastern Europe to enter. I mean, these are proving to be two of the, but not, as big as those debacles might be, as deleterious as their effects may or may not prove to be, neither of them can come anywhere close to comparing to the Byzantines allowing the Goths to cross the Rhine, or what was it, the Rhone? Anyhow, but it can't compare to that because in neither case, well, we don't know yet about Germany. Germany's got another year or two, but if the Syrians don't leave Angela Merkel dead on the field of battle before 2022, then we can conclude that Merkel's horrifically bad decision was not as bad as the Byzantine emperors. But regardless, it's always a very bad sign for any society to allow large numbers of foreigners to enter their lands. There's a reason we describe that as an invasion, and it doesn't matter if you give it a nice word like immigration, or you call them refugees, or if you say, well, they're just seeking a better life for them and their children. Well, yes, and that better life that they attain will be at the expense of the natives and their children. Thus has it always been. Thus will it always be. And so, there's no need or reason to, to excuse it, to justify it. People may attempt to do so, but it doesn't matter. I don't know what that's doing up there. I thought maybe I'd see if I can figure out how to get the chats. I'm gonna try something here real quick. Now maybe I can't. It doesn't look like I can add them right now. Anyhow, we'll have to do some more experimentation. Figure out what's going on with the multi-stream and different stream action in order to get this straightened out. But enough about that for now. Let me go on to a few other things. But first, I'll conclude with saying the shooting has started. It's not going to stop. It's not Trump's fault. It's not Biden's fault. It's not even the fault of the people who founded Black Lives Matter. All of these things are normal historical patterns, and the violence and the power struggle that we are witnessing, the very small beginnings of, are probably going to continue to get larger and larger and have more and more impact on more and more people. The way that these things tend to spiral out of control is because someone does something and then others react to what the first person did, and then people react to what those people did. And it's very clear that the authorities are not going to respond to this in an effective manner. The authorities are going to take sides, and different authorities are going to take different sides in different places. That's how it works. That's what always happens. And so, but I do want to point out something, is that, you see a lot of black pillars saying, well, the guy was arrested and that'll happen too. And that's why nobody can ever do anything. Nobody should ever resist, because if we do anything, then, we might get arrested and put in jail and so forth. So let me read you a letter that was written by somebody who didn't resist, by somebody who somehow ended up in jail anyhow, because this is where it ends, sooner or later, for one side or the other. And how we burned in the camps later, thinking, what would things have been like if every security operative, when he went out at night to make an arrest, had been uncertain whether he would return alive and had to say goodbye to his family? Or if, during the periods of mass arrests, as for example in Leningrad, when they arrested a quarter of the entire city, people had not simply sat there in their lairs, paling with terror at every bang of the downstairs door and at every step on the staircase, but had understood they had nothing left to lose, and had boldly set up in the downstairs hall an ambush of a half a dozen people with axes, hammers, pokers, or whatever else was at hand. The organs would have very quickly suffered a shortage of officers and transport, and notwithstanding all of Stalin's thirst, the cursed machine would have ground to an halt. If we didn't love freedom enough. And even more, we had no awareness of the real situation. We purely and simply deserved everything that happened afterward. That's Alexander Solzhenitsyn. And he's writing about how the Russian people didn't love freedom enough, and they just kept waiting and waiting and hoping for a respite that never came. So I'm not saying that things have reached that point in the United States yet. It hasn't reached that point in most of the United States. But because of what we've seen in Kenosha and what we're seeing elsewhere, we see that those, what we've seen in Minneapolis, it is clear that that sort of thing is developing. And you're going to need, at some point in time, you're going to need to be able to recognize that at some point, you're going to have to make a choice. Are you just going to cower in the basement, hoping that they're not rounding you up? Or are you going to defend your homes, defend your businesses, defend your families, defend your people? It's a question that each man and each woman have to answer for themselves. Nobody can tell you what to do. But you can look at what others have chosen. And you can look and see what the consequences of their choices were. Now, I don't know why that young Rittenhouse kid decided that he needed to be in Kenosha, defending the used car lot or whatever it was. But the point is that his instincts were more or less right. Did he do it in the optimal way? Probably not. Did he do it as a part of a organized team, watching out for each other? They talk about the rooftop Kenoshans now, rather like the rooftop Koreans. Perhaps not. Is he going to be punished unjustly? It's possible. But the question is, when the time comes, when they come to your town to burn your homes, to burn your businesses, what are you going to do? And Solzhenitsyn tells us pretty clearly what he wishes he had done. And that's something that I think that has to be taken into account, just as it's important to take into account what happens to this Rittenhouse kid. And I'm not going to go all Miles Mathis on you. Yes, just the name itself, Rittenhouse, makes you, and the just completely open nature of the whole thing does, there's the usual anomalies and that sort of thing. The guy in the paramedic hat with the pistol. What's that all about? But I'm not interested in going there. I'm more interested in what this signifies as to where American society is, where U.S. society is at the moment, as the balkanization and the ultimate collapse of the United States approaches. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen this fall. I've said for a long, long time, it's probably going to be in the 2033 timeframe. Back when I first started saying it, everybody thought I was crazy. Now people are saying, well, I think maybe you're too optimistic. No, these things always take time. But every single empire, every single state has eventually, sooner or later, fallen. Every political entity has broken up. It will happen in the United States, and we can actually see it happening in real time. It's not something to panic about. It's not something to get your panties in a bunch about. Read your history. Right now, I think it's a very, very good time to read the Thucydides chapter on revolution. It's a very good time, in fact I'm doing it right now, to read Machiavelli's History of Florence. Two viscerally opposed parties, more or less warring over the city for a period of nearly 120 years. And those people had a lot more in common than the various tribes that are struggling for control in the United States today. Anyhow, enough on that subject. I'm going to read a poem that was sent to me. I think that you might find this amusing. The poem is entitled Dark Lord. When your house falls to slumber and darkness fills the air, there is a shadowed figure still sitting in his chair. His eyes, they are wide open. His fingers on the keys, lit only by a reddish glow, the light from his machine. On into the wee hours, he roams the cybersphere. He speaks to those who'll listen. His messages are clear. His edges, they are jagged. His tongue is sharp as nails. He's fueled his share of fires, the source of many tales. Some say he isn't human, a creature of the night, and when his name is mentioned, they'll shrink away in fright. Do not attempt to find him, to catch him in his lair. Just when you think you've seen him, the Dark Lord isn't there. Anyhow, I very much appreciate that. That was a poem that was written for me on my birthday. Well done. Scans nicely. Anyhow, so I hope you enjoyed that. And now I also want to mention a couple things. We just announced these. You've probably seen these on the blog and so forth, but I would be remiss if I didn't show them here. This is the Castalia Library edition of the Divine Comedy. And this is the Libraria Castalia version. The very fancy goatskin version. And so we're now offering them for sale on the blog, along with some of the other, not on the blog, but on at Arkhaven. They're now available at the full retail price to non-subscribers. However, if you're a subscriber, we are sending you out a coupon probably tonight, and those coupons can be used to make sure that you get the subscription price. So don't, the retail price is $150 for the library, $400 for the Libraria, but the subscription prices remain the same if you're a subscriber. So it's a good reason to subscribe if you're interested in the next books. Plutarch, The Lives of the Greeks and Romans, Volume 1 and Volume 2 is coming. After that is Summa Helvetica, which is going to be spectacular. It's going to be our first color title page. And then Book 8 is going to be Aristotle's Politics. And so be on, if you're a subscriber to Castalia Library or to Libraria Castalia, please be on the lookout for those coupons in case you decide that you want to get an extra book. You don't have to pay the retail price. So anyhow, that's all I've got for tonight. I'm sorry we can't do any chats because I can't see any of the chats. Unfortunately, YouTube no longer allows you to use the Streaming Classic, so I have to figure out why. I think it has to do with the streaming key. I think I need to switch to a different streaming key in order for it to sync up properly. And so, but we'll get it sorted out. And in the meantime, if you're on unauthorized, the new Forge of Tolkien is out. It's an excellent one, and it actually deals with why Tolkien hated Disney. which is kind of fascinating. Clearly, he had excellent discernment, even that early on. And there's also new stuff up from the legend Chuck Dixon talking about New York in the 70s and 80s, which was a big influence, obviously, on his style. So, anyhow, that's all for tonight. I'm Voxday. This is the Darkstream.